I've been personally buying precious metals, and I encourage everybody out there, if you haven't done that, I've been doing that since 2005, so you got to buy precious metals.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. Today I'm broadcasting from Phoenix, Arizona, not Scottsdale, Arizona. They're close, but they're completely different worlds. And we have a special guest today. Definition of intelligence is if you agree with me, you're intelligent. And so this gentleman is very intelligent. I've done this show before also, but very seldom do you find somebody who lines up on all counts. And it's a Mr. Clay Clark. He's a friend of a good friend, Eric Trump. But we're also talking about money, bricks, and how screwed up the world can get in a few and a half hour. So Clay Clark is a very intelligent man, and there's so many ways we could take this thing. But I thought, since you and Eric are close, Trump, what you're saying about what Trump can't, what Donald, who is my age, and I can say or cannot say.
First of all, I have to honor you, sir. I want to show you what I did to one of your books here. There's a guy by the name of Jeremy Thorne, who was my boss at the time. I was 19 years old, working at Faith Highway. I had a job at Applebee's, Target, and DirecTV. And he said, "Have you read this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad?" And I said, "No." And my father, may he rest in peace, he didn't know these financial principles. So I started reading all of your books and really devouring your books. And I went from being an employee to self-employed, to the business owner, to the investor. And I owe a lot of that to you. And I just wanted to take a moment to tell you, thank you so much for allowing me to achieve success. And then I'll tell you all about Eric Trump. But I just want to tell you, thank you, sir, for changing my life.
But not only that, Clay, thank you, but you become an influencer. More than anything else, you've evolved into an influencer where your word has more and more power. So that's why I congratulate you on becoming. Because as you know, there's a lot of fake influencers out there too, or bad influencers.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm glad you and I agree so much, and thanks for reading my books.
Yeah.
That's the greatest thrill for me today. Not a thrill, but recognition is when people, young men especially, come up and say, "I read your book, changed my life. I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this." The reason is because when I was in my 20s, to say I want to become an entrepreneur was crazy. You're an entrepreneur? That means you're a crook. That was my poor dad. When my poor dad found out I wanted to be an entrepreneur, he says, "That means you want to be a crook and steal from people." I went, where in the definition of entrepreneur does it say that? But that's the academic mindset. Academics are Marxists, as you know.
Well, as you were, as you talked to Andy Schechtman and Mark Moss and George Gammon and John McGregor, that your inner circle, you talked to those guys a lot. I talked to Eric Trump and Kash Patel, who's a friend of yours, Eric Trump, who's a friend of yours. I talked to Alina Habba, who's President Trump's chief attorney right now, legal counsel. I talked to General Flynn on a daily basis. And so I can just give you some updates. Basically, President Donald J. Trump is going against the World Economic Forum. So the World Economic Forum, which was founded in 1971 per the recommendation of Henry Kissinger. By the way, the same year that America moved off the gold standard in 1971 per the recommendation of Henry Kissinger. By the way, the same year that abortions became legal in America, 1971. The same year that the song called Imagine by John Lennon was written, which prophesied the Great Reset, 1971. All these things kicked off in 1971. And the only person who seems to be fighting against it is President Donald J. Trump. And so I do this thing called the Reawaken America Tour, which it's a rare event, Robert, because typically when you do a conference, you want to bring in more money than it costs you to host the event. But for the Reawaken America Tour, Eric Trump heard about these events where I let people name their price. So people go to timetofreeamerica.com and they request a ticket, and they're always shocked to say, "You mean I can pay $5 and take my kids?" Yeah. Or you can pay $500. I don't care. I'm just trying to save America. And so at these events, we talk about election fraud, medical fraud, religious fraud, et cetera. And what Eric is doing now is Eric is managing and let's say an $8 billion, $9 billion company, while his father is the most persecuted person on the planet. And they have now hit President Donald J. Trump with a gag order, or a limited gag order, where there are certain topics he can't talk about, which is a problem because when you're a presidential candidate, you typically talk about the topics. And so now you're seeing Alina Habba being his chief legal spokesperson. She's doing a phenomenal job. And you're seeing Eric Trump now doing increasingly more and more interviews. And all I can say is Kash Patel is a phenomenal person. Eric Trump is a great person. Alina Habba is a great person. Don Jr., a great person. General Flynn, a great person. And all we want to do is we don't want to see the collapse of the dollar. We don't want to see the rolling out of the BRICS central bank digital currencies. And for anybody out there that doesn't know, for the last 16 years, about 17 years, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, they've all been hoarding the Earth's gold in preparation for introducing a new gold-backed programmable central bank digital currency. So a lot of your wonderful listeners, they listen to your show where you talk about buying precious metals, and I'm sure many of them do buy precious metals and many of them don't. Meanwhile, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, they've been hoarding the Earth's gold in preparation to introduce a gold-backed programmable central bank digital currency. Don't believe me, folks, look it up. It'll be based in Shanghai, China. It's called the New Development Bank, and this will be a new financial system. And now there's BRICS 11. You have Saudi Arabia joining. You have Dubai joining. So what's happening is the U.S. dollar, which was only tethered to this thing called the petrodollar beginning in the early 1970s, Saudi Arabia has now left the petrodollar. So, folks, this just in, we have a petrodollar with no petro. So we're about ready to see the collapse of the dollar, and only people like yourself and the listeners of your show who've decided to take your advice and to acquire precious metals are going to be prepared for it. And so I just encourage everybody out there, if you're listening right now, before your dollars disappear and evaporate into nothingness, I would highly recommend that you schedule a consultation with a precious metals dealer. And Robert, I know you vetted your precious metals dealer of choice, but everybody out there, it's very important that we take action. And I don't make a commission to encourage people to go to your precious metals dealer, but I would recommend that everybody takes action. And I believe that link is freedomgold.com/Robert. So freedomgoldguide.com/Robert. I don't make any money for telling you that, folks, but it's super important that you take action.
Well, that's a long way of good introduction there, Clay.
Yeah.
Anyway, the point here is this: it's people are addicted to this here.
Yeah.
And I'm old enough to know that this here, and in 1972, I was flying this here in Vietnam. And I killed a lot of people, I'm afraid, but that was our job. And that was when 71 was when Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. So 72, I'm flying this thing in Vietnam, and we don't know what gold is. It was illegal for Americans to own gold in 72. So my co-pilot and I flew behind enemy lines through the only gold mine we knew of, the NVA, North Vietnamese Army, has overrun the gold mine already. And we had to go try and buy gold. So this is what happens. So this here is an ounce of gold.
Yep.
This here is a US dollar. Back in 1972, when I was flying behind enemy lines, this thing cost 35 of these. So this piece of gold here costs 35 of these. Today, this thing here costs 2,100 of these. Now, did this get bigger or did this get more worthless? And what's happening to most people, Clay, as you know, they'd rather have this than this. And the one more thing is this here is a silver eagle, a silver Indian head nickel. It's only 35 bucks. Everybody in the world that I know of, kids can afford 35 bucks. My question to the world is this. This is 2023. This is 35 of these. This 35.
Right.
What will happen in 10 years? How many of these will it take to buy one of these? That's the question.
Well, Robert, I wanted to say this. You know, when you were serving in Vietnam, actually, when you returned from Vietnam, you had a lot of these hippies that were spitting on you and throwing eggs at you and saying horrible things about you. Those are now today's professors. So what's happening is these professors are teaching our kids. So, and this is my story, but in 2000-ish, when I first discovered your book, you said you have to go from being an employee to self-employed, to being a business owner, to becoming an investor. So I'm working at Applebee's, Target, and DirecTV, and everybody I know says to me, what are you doing? You got 3 jobs? What are you doing? I said, and I'm starting a company called DJConnection.com, which I don't own, but it grew to be one of the nation's largest wedding entertainment companies. So in 2005, because I followed your advice, and I also read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the whole series you had, I read pretty much every book you had, I sat down with a buddy of mine who owned a bank. And I said, sir, you own a bank. What should I be doing with my money? Because I'm making about $150 per show. We're doing 4,000 shows a year. What should I do? And he said, you need to take a quarter of your money and buy precious metals and take a quarter of your money and buy real estate from emotional people. I said, emotional people? He said, people that are going through a transition, see if you can buy their house on a discount. Look for tall grass. And so I started doing that. And this is full disclosure. When I started buying gold and silver, it was like $500 an ounce. And what I've done is I've taken that and I've protected it, and you keep it in a safe place, these sorts of things. And now I look like a financial genius to a lot of my peers and people my age, because they said, "You've been buying gold since 2005? Isn't it $2,000 an ounce?" I go, "Oh yeah." So I just encourage everybody out there, if you think you can't afford the $35 to buy some silver, you really need to take action, because what's going to happen is once Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, once they can conduct transactions without using the dollar system, okay, this is called BRICS Pay. Everyone needs to look it up. Just type it in, BRICS Pay, BRICS Pay. Once they can conduct transactions no longer using the US dollar, you're going to see this thing called de-dollarization. And that's where they're going to no longer acknowledge the value of our dollar. So we're in a country where we import everything, our food, our clothing, our electronics, and we export dollars in exchange for the items that we want. And we're going to find ourselves in a world where we want to import everything and nobody wants our fake currency. And that's what's happening right now. And so Xi and Putin, they just teamed up 7 days ago to announce, the New York Times has reported this, Xi and Putin have announced they're going to be ushering in a new world order. So I just want to encourage people, if you haven't bought precious metals, you need to do it now.
Well, that's a long way of saying it. Anyway,
Yeah.
What do you really think? Hey, my question here is this. Why do people hang on to paper?
Toilet paper?
That's my question. My whole family, they hang on to paper. They're Japanese. What do you expect? Japanese are savers. And they save paper. It makes no sense to me.
Well, I know why. I know why. I mean, when I read your book, I mean this, I'm at my office and Jeremy Thorne, my boss, he says, you got to read.
Thank you.
No, but I mean this. But Jeremy Thorne says you have to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So I'm reading it, and you're talking about buying assets and not buying liabilities. I had a conversation with a guy the other day, he's 50 years old, who argued with me about it. And I'll tell you this, because most people believe that the hippies who threw eggs at you and who spit at you when you came back after serving honorably for our nation in the Marines as a helicopter pilot, those people are now the professors. So I've got 5 kids now. My oldest daughter's 19 years old, okay? My son is 16 years old. And in his school, Tulsa, Oklahoma, a Christian school in Tulsa, Oklahoma, during the lockdowns, guess what? The Christian school made the kids wear masks. They did all the lockdowns. They put perpetual fear in the kids. And my son got suspended for not wearing a mask. And the teacher suspends him. And he goes to detention, the whole thing. And the teachers are saying, why won't you wear a mask? And he says, the models that said that 2.2 million people would die are false. The polymerase chain reaction tests are false, and it's treatable. And furthermore, we don't have a constitutional, there's no constitutional basis for a lockdown. And none of the teachers could grasp the idea that my 16-year-old son at the time, 14 years old, was the only kid at a school unwilling to wear a mask. And that's because his teachers are Marxists. They might not know it, but the formal education system today produces Marxists. It's a Marxist re-education camp known as college. That's what college is.
So, Claire, we'll come back. I want to talk to you about this because today on college campuses, it's very pro-Palestine. It's becoming an epidemic. It's like they're a pro-Viet Cong in many ways. I'm not taking sides, Palestinian, Hamas versus Israel. But today, all across the country, like Arizona State University that shut me down last year for doing health, wealth, and happiness. Arizona State professors came after me. They have a pedophile who teaches pedophilia at Arizona State, and they're protecting him. But I want to ask you this. We have pro-Palestine.
Yeah.
And I'm doing my best to see all sides. You know, I want to see the left side and the right side. But how fast is it spreading that it's pro-Palestine, anti-Semitic? That's what I want to know because, Clay, anti-Semitism brought us World War II. So when we come back here, well, anti-Semitism has been going on for 1,000 years probably.
Right.
But I want to find out how is it spreading so fast on college campuses? Why are we going anti-Semitic, pro-Palestine, or pro-terrorism today? So when we come back, we'll be talking to Clay Clark, Reawakening America, and a great man, and we have a lot to say here. We'll be right back.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kim Kiyosaki, co-host of the Rich Dad Radio Show. And I want to thank today's sponsor, our friends at Gold Alliance. You know, we should all be concerned about high inflation, a looming recession, the very troubled banking system, and out-of-control spending in Washington. And the fact is, during every major crisis in U.S. history, many of those who failed to prepare watched their savings, investments, and retirement funds plummet, while others with the foresight to own gold helped preserve their wealth and purchasing power. Now, we're facing several major crises at once, and we may soon face even more economic turmoil. So please don't wait. Consider gold and put yourself on the road to financial peace of mind. The new free 2023 Gold Guide from our friends at Gold Alliance can show you how. Just visit www.freegoldguide.com/Robert or call 1-800-473-4585. Republican governor and conservative commentator Mike Huckabee says Gold Alliance is the only gold provider he recommends to his friends and family. Please visit freegoldguide.com/Robert or call now at 1-800-473-4585. Thank you.
Feeling powerless over current events and your financial future? Financial freedom is your freedom. Robert Kiyosaki is the best-selling author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Over 40 million people have taken Robert's advice. Now it's your turn. Attend Robert's free virtual wealth building event. Claim your free access now at richdadfree.com. Don't wait, access is limited. Go to richdadfree.com. That's richdadfree.com.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. Today, I want to remind you that all of our programs are archived at richdadradio.com. Once again, richdadradio.com. If you want to hear the show again, please go there. If your friends, family members, or that idiot brother-in-law of yours who's still saving cash, waiting for the apocalypse or whatever they do, this is the show for you. Our guest today is Clay Clark, the Reawakening of America, an outspoken young man here. And I like what he has to say. As I said, the definition of intelligence is, if you agree with me, you're intelligent. But now I have some really big questions because my generation, the boomer generation, I got hit with rotten eggs, spit on at the University of Hawaii and in California. And today, those people are our teachers and our leaders. Like I'm sure Nancy Pelosi I'm only kidding, was in the crowd throwing eggs on me. You know, and these guys are hardcore Nazis or commies. I don't know which one they are. But our leadership is shot. We can't even get a Speaker of the House in. And then one of my best friends, Marine Lieutenant General Jack Bergman, was in the hunt for Speaker of the House. He's a speaker. He's a Republican representative from northern Michigan. But when you have great leaders like Lieutenant General Bergman who can't get in there, it really disturbs me. The leadership of this country has gone weak. But the big question today is I'm doing my best to stand on the edge of the coin. You know, all coins have three sides, heads, tails, and the edge. I saw this morning that riots are breaking out on college campuses like Arizona State, which is now a Marxist organization. Yep. They're going pro-Palestinian. And I don't know the facts. I'm doing my best to keep an open mind. But I think Hamas attacked the Israelis. And it's just like on Arizona State University, they have this professor who teaches pedophilia, who attacked Charlie Kirk's cameraman. So how come our radical left takes the side of the aggressor? I mean, how can this guy Michael Crow, the chancellor of Arizona State, support a school teacher dressed in women's clothing to teach pedophilia? What is going on our college campuses, Clay?
Well, and I mean this sincerely. And I'm not just saying this as a recovery for our little banter there. I mean this. When you came back from serving honorably in the military, these people threw eggs at you and they spit on you. This is what they did. And they are now the professors. So This is the problem. So the people that are educating the next generation sincerely despised people like you who risked your life flying in a Marine helicopter. So, you know, you and I can agree or disagree on the different religious views. But what I can say is I appreciate your service. And somebody out there might say, oh, you're just saying, but those people threw eggs at you and now they're professors. These are the people teaching our kids.
How can they be so pro-Israel, so not that pro-Palestine? That's my question is, why aren't they this is anti-Semitic, I'm saying it another way. Right. And that's my curiosity.
Yeah.
because it is now anti-Semitic versus
True.
pro-Palestine and all that. Clay, we're going for revolution.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at a map and you just take any religious connotations out of it and you look at Israel, it's about the size of New Jersey. And it's surrounded by countries that are not pro-Israel or pro-West, let's say. And you see, if you take any religious connotations out of it, you see Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, as they all team up to create the BRICS 11 bloc. These are, we'll say, anti-Christian maybe, or West or I don't know how you want to describe it, but these are countries that are not big fans of Israel and not big fans of America. And so that's what's happening here. And if you look at what happens in China, folks, if you look at what happens in China, they have re-education camps. They've got, this is real stuff, forced organ harvesting. And look at how much money from China is making its way into the college universities. So, I mean, we're in a thing where you have communist, Marxist money making their way onto the campuses of colleges. And I think it's a very disturbing. And what I love about your program, and I mean this, you allow people to share both sides. Like you said, the coin with three sides. College campuses, they don't allow both sides or all three sides. They make you take the left or the Marxist agenda, or you're not allowed to speak. And that's why those 39 professors came after you when you spoke there at that event in Arizona.
So my question to you, without bringing a religious connotation, is,
yes, sir,
how can these 39 professors, or these, like what's happening today in Harvard, donors like me are yanking their money away from the schools, like T.W. Lewis yanked his contribution to Arizona State out. So the people with the money, the capitalists, are now pulling their money away from like Harvard, Princeton, Yale.
Well, I got asked to do a time management course at a major university like 10 years ago because I was Oklahoma's Entrepreneur of the Year. This is before the world went crazy, okay? And they brought me in, Robert, to teach time management. And I said, if you want to become successful, you're going to need to have three things: a to-do list, a calendar, and you need to block out time every day to organize your day. A to-do list, a calendar, and you organize your day. And then I talked about surrounding yourself with an accountant you can trust, a real estate agent you can trust, a legal expert you can trust, and a lot of the things that you teach in your books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, et cetera. Anyway,
by the way, that's very solid advice. I'm going to take your advice on time management because I'm terrible at it.
Well, I taught this, and a woman puts her hand up, a young lady, a college student. She says, but what if I have a late problem? And I said, what do you mean late? I said, I do a lot of interviews. And when I say I'm going to do an interview at 11:30, I have to be there at 11:30. You can't have a late problem. She said, but that's just not the way I was raised. And it causes me anxiety to use a calendar. And I noticed, and I'm serious, I noticed that most of the students were like, yeah, woo, because she stood up against the tyranny of time management. And then I had questions. People were asking me, well, Clay, when you had your 3 jobs, what did you do to balance your life? I said, balance my life? I had one wife. I had a job at Target, Applebee's, and DirecTV. And my balance was I worked 90 hours a week and came home and hung out with my wife. That was my balance. I had one great friend and 3 jobs. And these people were so offended by the idea. What they want is universal basic income. That's what they want. They want universal basic income. Canada's talking about it. The United States is talking about it. They want to get paid to do nothing. That's why all these people who are trained by the professors that were once hippies throwing eggs at you and spitting at you, they are now, we're seeing a group of people that have never had a job. They've never worked hard. They've never organized their time, and they all want to come out as middle managers. And through various technologies that are being rolled out there, the marketplace does not have a place for them. So look at Apple right now. Look at Apple. I ask you folks, what is the CEO of Apple doing right now with his Apple stock? What is happening? What's happening is a lot of these automations and systems have been put in place, and they're saying, you know what? We don't need these certain people in the workplace. So you're starting to see massive contraction. You're starting to see the CEO of Apple start to say, I don't know that I have a whole lot of faith in the future of Apple and the American economy. You're starting to see money move out of the USA. You're starting to see Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa become more bold in their involvement in world orders. And I'm not making this up. Xi and Putin, they got together. Look it up, folks. The New York Times reported this. They got together in the last 7 days, and they said they are teaming up together to roll out a new world order. That's not a phrase I came up with. That's not something in the Bible. That's what they actually said, and the New York Times reported it.
So, Clay, we can complain. What are you doing about it? I mean, what are you personally? How are you protecting yourself?
Well, I got I have
from
three.
what you see coming?
Yeah, I have three things that I'm doing, and I mean this sincerely. One is I've decided that I'm going to do what you said to do years ago. I just keep doing it. I've been personally buying precious metals, and I encourage everybody out there, if you haven't done that, I've been doing that since 2005. So you got to buy precious metals. The second thing, and this isn't a shameless pitch, so feel free to edit me, but the Reawaken Tour that I do with Eric Trump, it's a money loser, but I think it's a gain for America. We do these events and we let people name their price and we talk about these issues, because if it wasn't for great shows like yours, people wouldn't know. So for anybody out there, if you go to timetofreeamerica.com, that's where you can learn about our events. So one, my personal life, I'm buying precious metals. Second, for the world, I'm doing the Reawaken Tour at timetofreeamerica.com. Third is I'm making sure that in the event of a supply chain collapse that I've thought about sustainability, because the economic war is being waged right now. And I don't think a lot of people know this, but when you've had some of your guests on your show, specifically Andy Sheckman, and he's talked about a little and a little and a little, and then all at once the US dollar will collapse. I do believe that will happen. And so again, how many shows are like yours where you're having people like Andy Sheckman come on and give people these updates? Very few. And JP Morgan right now and Bank of America have begun tokenization of the US dollar, meaning that your money is going to start to become programmable. This is a real thing. JP Morgan and Bank of America have begun tokenizing the US dollars. And so this is a very alarming time to be holding cash. So you got to get out of that fiat currency.
Thank you. Anyway, when's your next Reawakening America tour? When's your next event?
It's December 15th and 16th in Tulare, California. That's Tulare, California, which is 30 miles outside of Fresno. We have about 70% of the tickets sold. And again, you can name your price to our event. You can pay whatever price you want to pay. We have 70 speakers. And the way we work, Robert, and you've been to a lot of conferences, I don't have any sponsors. So there's no one I can't offend. I don't tell the speakers what to say. So when the speakers get up there, sometimes they say things I agree with, sometimes they don't. It's called freedom of speech. There's no teleprompters, and it's a blasty blast. It's somewhere between comedy. It feels like Dave Chappelle comedy meets the energy of a college football game. And I've said this to you before, but always an open invitation if you ever want to lower your standards and come join me. And I really do appreciate you, sir. I really do. It's been an honor to talk to you. You've absolutely changed my life.
Well, Clay, you're a young man rising up to the top.
Well, thank you, brother. Yeah.
I would rather be on your side than in front of you.
Well, thank you so much. And again, I mean this sincerely. I listen to your program probably 4 to 5 times a week. And you say, how do I do that? Well, you archive your shows. So I can go back and hear a show that you put out last year, years before. And what I love is you continue to evolve. Your book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, in my mind, is timeless. But then you also talk about the things that are right in front of us. And so I appreciate you always staying relevant.
Well, thank you very much. And then say hello to Kash Patel for me also. He's a good man. And anyway, it's an interesting time. And keep speaking out there, Clay.
Thank you, brother. Have a great day.
Thank you. And we come back with the final words from Rich Dad Radio. We'll be right back. Thank you. Thank you, Clay. Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. Special thanks to Clay Clark and he has many books out. One of them is the Wheel of Wealth, an Entrepreneur's Action Guide. And he's a young man. He's in his 40s. He's on his way up. He's the next generation coming up of people who are influencers. But anyway, once again, we don't recommend any investments. I talk about gold, silver, and Bitcoin and all that. We talk about it. We talk about what we do or don't do, but we don't recommend it. So that's up to you. And please find your own financial advisor. My final words are this, is that I started, it was in 72, and I was flying this thing. I realized something was wrong with America. And then I came back, and in January 3rd, 2073, I was spit on and hit with eggs by the hippies, all the love-in generation people. And I knew America was going down the tubes then. So I've been preparing. But I want to just say what I've been doing ever since Vietnam, and I call it the 5 Gs. And I have a list right here, how I'm preparing for what's coming. Number 1 is gold, ground. I have real estate. I mean, Kim and I own a piece of property in South Carolina that if all hell breaks loose, that's where we're going. We have oil. I invest in oil wells. And then grub, food. We have lots of food. And just FYI, China just announced that they expect famines to go across China now. So it's all coming. So these are the 4 Gs: gold, ground, I have safe real estate, gasoline, and food. So the property like Kim and I own that we're part of is a community of very affluent people, but we can grow our own food and catch our own fish, places loaded with deer and wild hogs. So ladies and gentlemen, I've been preparing for this for a long time. People call me a prepper. You can also call me a psychopath. But anyway, I agree with what Clay Clark is saying. We're in serious trouble here, ladies and gentlemen. And I agree with him too. Those hippies became our leaders. And I'm afraid our leaders are going to take us into Marxism. With that said, thank you for watching the Rich Dad Radio Show. And also thank you to Clay Clark. Thank you.
This podcast is a presentation of Rich Dad Media Network.